"Mom, you'll sleep in the garage this weekend. Kiara's parents need the guest room." There wasn't a pause before the next sentence. "And please don't embarrass us. If you act weird or clingy or, I don't know, sentimental, I'll have no choice but to start looking at homes for you. Assisted living, I mean." I stared at the screen, at my son's name blinking on my phone. His voice still filled the speaker, but I couldn't hear the rest. Something about grilling, towels, maybe a wine preference. I let it run until it stopped. Then I pressed the red button. I had bought this house. After Nathan passed, after the funeral, after the quiet crept in, I bought it with the policy money he'd quietly kept in my name, $450,000. He never told me about it while he was alive. He just wanted me to be safe. Jeremy knew that. He also knew how long Nathan and I had dreamed of a little house outside the city, a quiet place with enough space for family visits and nothing loud after 9 p.m. The hardwood floors, the old stone walkway, the maple trees by the window, everything I chose had his memory layered inside. And now I was being moved to the garage, like clutter. I didn't reply to Jeremy's message. I just stood in the kitchen and looked around at the tea kettle. I still hadn't used the folded guest towels, the extra pillowcases, the 3 boxes of linen I hadn't unpacked yet. They were supposed to come next weekend, but now they'd be here Friday. That gave me 2 days. Not to prepare the guest room, but to prepare myself. I opened the hallway closet and pulled down the extra blankets, folded clean. Nathan's wool throw from the cabin was still there. I took it with me. The air in the garage smelled like wood and damp rubber. I opened a window, sat on the camp cot I had bought just in case we had too many guests. Then I turned off the light and sat quietly, listening to the wind through the trees and the silence behind the door. 3 months after Nathan died, I sat in the bank parking lot with a cashier's check in my hand. $450,000. Every cent from the life insurance policy he had taken out without ever telling me. It was written in my maiden name, quiet, deliberate, like everything Nathan did. The realtor met me outside a 1-story brick house on a quiet street 2 towns over. It wasn't grand, but it was solid, just a little over 2,000 square feet. Garden beds already in place, a porch swing, 3 bedrooms, one of them already painted pale blue. The owners had left a wind chime on the back patio. I heard it sing when I signed the deed. Nathan never saw this place. He never saw the way the light came through the east windows in the morning. He never knew how the cabinet smelled faintly of cinnamon. But I bought it with his hands at my back. That night, I called Jeremy. I could hardly contain the warmth in my voice. "Sweetheart," I said, "I bought a house. A beautiful one with a garden Nathan would have loved." There was a pause. Too long. "You bought what?" His voice flattened. "A house, just outside Cedar Grove. It's quiet, lots of trees, 3 bedrooms." Another pause. "You used the insurance?" "Yes," I said softly. "It was in my name." "You mean you spent my inheritance?" he snapped. "You didn't even ask." I sat on the floor of the empty living room, still in my coat. "Jeremy, it wasn't yours. Your father left it to me. He wanted me to be okay." "And I wanted to send my kids to college without debt," he shot back. "But I guess you needed a porch swing more." He hung up before I could respond. That night, I unpacked the kettle Nathan and I used every Sunday morning. I set it on the stove. A home should be more than walls and windows. I told myself that as I lay in the dark, hearing nothing but the wind brushing past the glass. They arrived Thursday evening, not Friday, like they said. I was folding towels when I saw the headlights sweep across the living room walls. Kiara walked in behind him, her heels clacking sharp across the floor I had just mopped. "It's cute," she said, looking around. "Smaller than I pictured, but I suppose that's fine." Jeremy dropped their bags in the hallway and headed straight for the thermostat. "Where's the laundry room? Kiara's parents are sensitive to dust. We'll need to run the sheets through a few times before Saturday." I opened my mouth, then closed it. He hadn't asked. He was already moving down the hall, opening doors like he lived there. Kiara wandered into the dining room. "We'll need to move this table. It doesn't fit with the style. Can we put it in the garage?" My fingers tightened on the towels. That night I made pasta. Jeremy said it was too soft. Kiara picked out the garlic. No one asked how I'd been. When I tried to tell them about the garden I was starting, Jeremy interrupted, talking about wine options for the weekend. "Let's just keep things simple, Mom," he said, glancing at Kiara. "Don't overshare, and maybe don't bring up Dad. It makes people uncomfortable. After dinner, Jeremy handed me a folded blanket and said, "You'll be more comfortable in the garage. The house will be full." I didn't argue. I walked down the steps alone, past the washer and dryer, past the utility shelves, and laid the blanket over the cot I had set up the week before. I hadn't really believed I'd need it. Upstairs, they laughed. Kiara played music from her phone. I heard the faint buzz of voices, the squeak of the furniture as they shifted it around. I turned off the garage light. The floor was cold. The silence was colder. By morning, I was wide awake before the sun. I made coffee. Then I walked up to the attic. The attic was warmer than I expected, the air heavy with the smell of dust and cardboard. I hadn't been up there since moving in. Most of the boxes were still sealed, stacked in uneven towers against the wall. Nathan's handwriting was on the sides, block letters that had faded but not disappeared. Taxes, old photos, insurance. When I packed them after the funeral, I told myself I'd sort through them once I felt ready. That was a lie. I wasn't ready then, and I wasn't now. But sleep hadn't come easily the night before, and I needed something to do with my hands besides wring them. At the bottom of one box, beneath a stack of manila folders, was the small wooden box I had carried from our old house. It had sat untouched in every place we'd ever lived, a quiet, square secret Nathan never talked about. I had packed it myself before the movers came, sliding it into a crate and marking it only with a single word: keep. I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside was a folded letter and a copy of a life insurance policy. My maiden name, Ellen Grady, was written in neat print across the top. The letter was short. "Ellen, if you're reading this, I'm not there to remind you how capable you are. Use this to buy something that belongs only to you. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for that. You've spent enough of your life giving things away. Nathan." I read it twice before setting it down. Every asset, every dollar was in my independent name. No one could touch it, not Jeremy, not anyone. Nathan had made sure of that. For the first time since his funeral, I felt something stronger than grief: certainty. I folded the letter, slid it back into the box, and locked it. Then I carried it downstairs and placed it on the kitchen counter beside the phone. The house felt different now, not safer, but steadier. When the phone rang that afternoon, I didn't hesitate to answer. I couldn't sleep. The garage walls felt closer that night, as if the darkness had thickened around the cot. Around midnight, my phone buzzed softly on the shelf. Motion alert, kitchen, 12:04 a.m. I tapped open the app without much thought. The security system had been installed the first week I moved in. Not for anyone in particular, just peace of mind. I lived alone. I had no neighbors within shouting distance. A few quiet cameras had seemed reasonable. The image loaded slowly, then sharpened. Jeremy and Kiara were standing in the kitchen. He was barefoot. She had a glass of wine. I turned the volume up. "She's old," Jeremy said, leaning against the counter. "She'll obey. She always does." Kiara walked past him, opened the fridge. "When do we start the paperwork?" "Next week," he said. "My friend at the clinic said he can get us what we need. Once we declare her mentally unfit, I'll have full control." Kiara laughed, light, careless. Then, "We list the house after that?" Jeremy nodded fast. "It'll look like we're doing it for her own good, downsizing or whatever. No one will ask questions." The video ended with them toasting, clinking glasses like it was already done. I sat there in the dark, my thumb hovering over the replay button. I watched it again, then once more. I didn't feel shock, not exactly. This wasn't the first time I'd heard cruelty in Jeremy's voice, just the first time it had been so organized, so smug. They weren't improvising, this was a plan. I closed the app and set the phone down on the table. The garage air had cooled overnight, but I no longer felt cold. I pulled Nathan's wool throw tighter around my shoulders and lay back, eyes wide open. If they wanted this house to be my cage, they'd have to learn what it felt like when the door locked the other way. The next morning, I brewed coffee before sunrise and started preparing the guest dinner for Friday night. By Saturday evening, the house smelled of roasted chicken and rosemary potatoes. I had been up since dawn, chopping, stirring, cleaning, moving quietly between the stove and the sink. Jeremy had given me a list that morning, simple, polite commands masked as requests. "Keep the table neat, Mom. Don't interrupt Kiara's father. Smile when people arrive." When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped back. Jeremy answered, his voice bright and warm in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, come in, please." Kiara's parents walked in carrying a bottle of wine. They were pleasant, well-dressed, and unaware of the tension underneath the polished floors. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to adjust the oven temperature, though I could hear every word. Jeremy began talking about the property, the size, the purchase process, the investment potential. Each sentence started with I. "I found this place at the perfect time. I handled the paperwork myself. I plan to expand the back deck next spring." Laughter circled the table like a rehearsed line from a play. Kiara's mother called him impressive. Kiara smiled, tilting her head just so. No one asked where I was. I waited until dessert was served. Lemon tart, something light Kiara had requested. And then I stepped into the dining room, every face turned toward me. I was still wearing my apron, a thin line of flour across my wrist. "I hope everything tastes good," I said softly. Jeremy cleared his throat. "It's fine, Mom. You can go rest now." But I didn't move. I placed the folder I'd been holding on the table beside the wine glasses. The papers inside were neatly clipped together, the deed, the policy copy, the trust details. "I thought you might like to see how this house was really bought," I said. My voice wasn't raised, but it didn't need to be. Kiara's father leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Jeremy froze, his jaw tightening, words caught halfway between charm and panic. I reached for the folder, opened it, and slid the top page toward him. The room went very still when I pressed play. The camera footage appeared on my phone screen first, then filled the air through the small speaker. Jeremy's voice echoed, steady and confident. "She's old. She'll obey. Next week we get the paperwork, declare her unfit. Then the house is ours." No one moved. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint clink of Kiara's mother's bracelet as her hand trembled against her wine glass. Kiara's father stared at Jeremy as if seeing him for the first time. Jeremy reached for the phone, but I held it out of reach. "There's more," I said quietly. "You might want to hear the part about selling the house before I was even aware of your plans." Kiara's face drained of color. She glanced at her parents, then at the table. Jeremy's expression twisted into something between fury and disbelief. "You're twisting things. That's not what I meant." I set the phone down and opened the folder beside it. "Here are the loan statements you never repaid to your father, $80,000 in total. And these," I said, sliding the next set of pages forward, "are copies of the trust. Every cent from that policy is under my maiden name. You're not listed anywhere." He stared at the papers, lips parting, eyes scanning each line as if they might rearrange themselves. Kiara's mother whispered something to her husband. His reply was low and curt. Jeremy's voice cracked when he spoke again. "You went through all this just to humiliate me?" "No," I said. "You did that yourself." I gathered the folder, the phone, the stack of untouched dessert plates, and turned toward the kitchen. Behind me, I heard chairs scraping and murmurs rising, a polite dinner splintering into accusation and shame. By the time I reached the doorway, no one was laughing. I washed the dishes that night without music, the sound of running water steady and calm. When the last plate was dry, I locked the front door and went to bed, knowing tomorrow would not bring peace, only the next move. The morning after the dinner, the house was silent again. The chairs were pushed in, the plates washed, the table bare. By noon, Jeremy's car appeared in the driveway. He didn't knock at first, just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at the front door like it might open itself. Then came the knock, slow, deliberate. "Mom, we need to talk." His voice was softer than I'd expected. I overreacted. So did you. Let's start over. I stayed in the kitchen, phone in hand, the camera feed open. "Go home, Jeremy," I said through the door. He sighed. "You don't mean that. I'm your son." Silence stretched between us. Then the knocking grew louder, sharper. "If you keep this up," he warned, "I'll have to take legal action. You can't handle this place alone." "I can," I said, "and I am." For 2 days, he came back, first with flowers, then with apologies, then with Kiara. She stood at the edge of the porch, tears painted onto her voice. "We just want to help, Ellen. It's not safe for you here alone." I watched through the window, unseen. The cameras captured every word. On the third night, a man came with them, middle-aged, carrying a clipboard. Jeremy announced him loudly. "Mom, this is Dr. Hamilton. He's here to evaluate your condition." I called my lawyer before I even answered. "Don't engage," he said. "Film everything." I did. The man tried the door handle twice, muttering something about concern for my mental health. I stayed behind the curtain until they left, the taillights bleeding red down the road. The next morning, a locksmith came and replaced every lock in the house. I added a chain, then 2 more cameras, one pointed at the driveway, another at the kitchen window. That night, the footage showed nothing but trees swaying in the wind. I sat on the porch until the air cooled and the stars came out. It was the first time in days I felt almost still. But peace never lasts long when someone believes they've been denied ownership. It started with a slam against the back door, louder than a knock, sharper than a threat. I was already in the bedroom, lights off, the closet door half open. I didn't need to see them to know it was Jeremy. I knew the rhythm of his impatience. I knew the weight of his footsteps. "Mom," he shouted, "come out now, this is for your own good." Glass shattered. The kitchen window. I covered my mouth with both hands and stepped into the closet, careful not to let the wooden hangers rattle. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Footsteps crossed the hardwood, quick and erratic. "She's hiding," Kiara whispered, more nervous than before. "We shouldn't be doing this." "She's my mother," Jeremy hissed. "This is my house. She's the one who's trespassing." I didn't move. Through the cracks of the closet door, I saw the hallway light flicker on. Their voices came closer, then paused just outside my bedroom. "We know you're in here," he said louder. "Your car's outside. Just come out, Mom. Don't make this harder." I didn't answer. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A silent alert. Police dispatched. David had set it up himself, tied to the camera motion alerts. I just had to wait. Then sirens. The sound cut through the walls like rescue. Doors slammed. Someone yelled, "Police, hands up, running!" Then silence. I stayed where I was until I heard the knock, steady, practiced. "Mrs. Ward," an officer called. "It's safe now." When I stepped out, 2 officers stood in the living room. Jeremy was outside in cuffs, shouting at no one. Kiara sat on the porch steps, face buried in her hands. David arrived 20 minutes later. We watched the footage together on his tablet. Jeremy smashing the window, Kiara hesitating at the door, the fake doctor's voice from 2 nights ago, all tied together now. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. David looked at me and nodded. "This is enough," he said. I turned off the footage and walked to the sink. The kitchen smelled like broken glass and something final. The months that followed felt like a season unfolding inside me. There were court dates and paperwork, hearings I didn't have to attend because the evidence spoke louder than I ever could. The restraining order was granted. The trust finalized. Jeremy was sentenced to probation and counseling. Kiara moved away quietly. The house stood exactly as it had before, but everything inside it had changed. I started waking with the sun again, no longer from fear, just habit. I brewed my coffee, pulled on my boots, and stepped out to the patch of dirt behind the garage that I once overlooked. It had never been much, but now it was mine. The soil gave easily when I pressed my hands into it. Tomatoes, sage, collards, nothing extravagant, just enough to keep me outside, watching something grow again. I stopped answering calls unless I recognized the number. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. David called once a week to check in. His voice was always calm, never rushed. On one of those calls, I told him about an idea, something that had started as a thought in the middle of the night and kept coming back. "There should be a list," I said, "a network, a place women like me can turn to when their own children turn against them." He didn't laugh. He didn't question it. "Let's build it," he said. And so I started writing, names, needs, questions I wished someone had asked me before everything fell apart. Not to punish anyone. That had never been the point. I didn't want revenge. I wanted women like me to know they weren't losing their minds. They weren't alone, and they didn't have to hand over their keys just to keep the peace. Some days I wrote letters to no one, just to get the words out. Some days I just watched the garden. Things grew slowly, but they grew. The house no longer echoed with steps that didn't belong. There was no garage bed, no shouting, no recordings to save. Just quiet, and my name on every paper, every deed, every door. Sometimes I still caught myself listening for Nathan's wind chime. The one that had come with the house, left behind by strangers, but claimed by us in spirit. It swayed when the breeze passed through the porch rafters, a small sound that meant the air was moving, that life still stirred somewhere beyond the walls. I learned that peace isn't silence, it's ownership. It's knowing that no one else gets to define where you belong. And every morning, as light spilled across the kitchen counters Nathan never got to see, I whispered his name and poured 2 cups of coffee, one for memory, one for me. Then I stepped outside into a day that was mine.